So what would you do if you woke up tomorrow and found out you had just won 2.4 million pounds on the lottery? I want you to really think about it. Paint that picture in your head for a second.
I mean, it's the ultimate fantasy for a reason, right? For most people, that amount of money is, well, it represents a very specific kind of freedom.
Yeah, exactly. Like you pay off the mortgage immediately.
Right. You buy a nice, reliable car, maybe you plan some, extended travel, or perhaps you just look for a quiet, character-filled cottage in the countryside, just to live out your retirement in total peace away from the city.
And when journalists interview jackpot winners, it is literally always the exact same heartwarming narrative. Tears of joy, frantic phone calls to the family, and solemn promises to be sensible with the windfall. But that brings us to the subject of today's deep dive, which is about a man named John Eric Spivey. We've gathered this massive stack of sources for this one, so police intelligence reports, court documents, local news investigations. Our mission today is to look at what happens when that ultimate lottery fantasy intersects with something entirely different.
Yeah, so in 2010, at the age of 65, Spivey hit that exact jackpot. He won 2.4 million pounds on the national lottery. And, following the classic fantasy script we just talked about, he used a portion of that money to buy a beautiful red brick cottage on Lower Green Lane in Astley.
Which, for those who don't know, Astley is this quiet, semi-rural village right on the outskirts of Wigan in Greater Manchester. It really seems like the perfect setting for a quiet retirement.
Oh, absolutely.
It's got this rich working class history, used to be coal mining country,
Hmm.
but today it's the kind of place where properties are set really far back from the road. You've got the Bridgewater Canal running nearby and like a nature reserve right within walking distance.
And if you lived on that lane, you would just see a completely normal-looking pensioner. I mean, he spent his time doing a bit of gardening. He drove around the village in this battered old white
Just
van.
normal guy.
Yeah, to any casual observer, he looked completely harmless. It's the kind of neighborhood where people are polite, they might wave at you over the fence, but ultimately they just respect each other's privacy and mind their own business.
But I do need to warn you right now, this is not your typical heartwarming lottery story.
Yeah.
Because there were these strange little anomalies if you looked closely at Spivey's property.
Right, the windows, for example.
Yeah, the windows on his converted stables were completely frosted over. And very occasionally, this humble pensioner, who usually drove a battered white van, would be seen backing a bright red Lamborghini out of his driveway.
Which is definitely a red flag.
Exactly. This level of secrecy and sudden, flashy wealth doesn't just materialize out of thin air. You don't go from pruning roses to hiding sports cars in a rural village without some underlying ambition. So we need to look at who Spivey actually was before he bought the winning ticket.
Right, and there's this heavy temptation to look at cases like this and rely on a familiar trope, right? The idea that sudden wealth corrupted a good man, that the lottery money went to his head, isolated him, and kind of dragged him into the underworld.
Which happens a lot, to be fair.
It does, but according to the prosecutors who eventually dismantled his life, that is absolutely not the case here. The trial judge actually noted that Spivey already possessed a significant criminal record.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the lottery money didn't change his character at all. It basically just removed his financial constraints.
Oh, so it essentially gave him venture capital.
Yeah.
He used his lottery jackpot as seed money to scale up an ambition he already had.
Exactly. He built one of the largest counterfeit operations British police have literally ever seen. He took that triple garage and the stables behind his beautiful country cottage, and he converted them into a highly sophisticated industrial-scale laboratory.
Just right there in his backyard.
Right there. He had the windows frosted so no one could look in. He heavily modified the electrical supply to handle industrial power draws, and he brought in heavy manufacturing equipment under the cover of darkness.
It's like a tech startup getting a massive multi-million-dollar round of funding from Silicon Valley investors. Except this is a really dark, twisted version of Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, where the entire business plan is highly illegal.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
But a facility like that creates an immediate logistical problem, doesn't it? It's like a millionaire can buy all the heavy equipment in the world, but an aging pensioner isn't loading metric tons of raw materials and maintaining industrial machinery all by himself.
No, definitely not. He had to build a network. And he constructed a very rigid, almost corporate-style hierarchy. He put together a four-man crew with highly siloed responsibilities.
Okay, so who is on the crew?
Well, at the top of the organizational chart sits John Eric Spivey himself. He acts as the financier and the landlord of the operation. He basically controls the real estate and the capital flow.
The CEO, basically.
Exactly. Then below him is his son, John Collins Spivey, who was 37 years old at the time. His role was strictly operations and logistics, so handling the physical movement of goods and managing the distribution network.
Okay, so they have the executive suite and the supply chain manager. But if you are buying industrial mixers and packaging machines, you can't exactly just use your personal checking account. You need corporate shielding.
And the third man provided exactly that. Lee Ryan Drury, who was 55, acted as the front man. His primary responsibility was to make the operation look entirely legitimate to the outside world.
Mostly to the people selling them the equipment, I imagine.
Right, specifically to equipment manufacturers and commercial landlords. Drury set up a fake health supplements company, complete with this really professional-looking website. They used this corporate entity as a cover to purchase industrial tablet presses and manage their off-site storage facilities.
So anyone flagged their massive equipment purchases, they could just point to this polished website and claim they were manufacturing vitamin C tablets or something.
Precisely.
And what about the fourth man? Because in any modern enterprise of this scale, someone has to manage the digital infrastructure.
Yeah, that was Callum Dorian, a 35-year-old who prosecutors identified as the principal organizer. He was the tech specialist. He ran the day-to-day coordination and managed all their communications using highly encrypted networks. He actually operated under the digital handle Fallen Soda.
Fallen Soda. Okay.
Okay.
So with the funding, the facility, the front company, and the logistics network in place, we need to talk about the actual product being manufactured behind those frosted windows.
Right. They were producing counterfeit diazepam, which is vastly better known by its famous brand name, Valium.
And Valium is a legitimate medication. It's been heavily prescribed since the 1960s to treat severe anxiety and muscle spasms.
Exactly.
Basic economics tells us that when doctors recently started tightening controls and reducing prescriptions, mostly due to its addictive nature, it immediately created this massive gap in the market. People who were dependent on the drug suddenly couldn't get it legally.
And desperate people looking for relief invariably turn to the illicit street market. They're buying what they think are familiar blue tablets. But, and this is crucial, Spivey's factory wasn't making actual Valium.
Wait, really?
No, those pills did not contain a single milligram of diazepam. They were actually using a synthetic chemical called etizolum.
Okay, let's explore the mechanics of that choice. Why use a synthetic substitute instead of just, manufacturing the real thing?
We can basically look at this through the lens of the economics of adulteration. In the illicit drug trade, criminals avoid authentic pharmaceuticals because the legitimate supply chain is incredibly difficult to breach.
Oh, that makes sense. Too much red tape to steal the real stuff.
Exactly. Synthetic chemicals like etizolum, however, are manufactured in clandestine labs, often in Asia. Because they are highly concentrated in a raw powder form, a syndicate only needs to smuggle a few small kilograms of powder into the country to press millions of pills.
Wow, millions.
Yeah, it is infinitely easier to hide a vacuum-sealed bag of powder in a commercial shipping container, often mislabeled as industrial solvents, than it is to divert pallets of heavily regulated medical supplies.
But the pharmacological impact of that substitution is just devastating, isn't it?
It is. Etizolum operates on the exact same GABA receptors in the human brain as genuine Valium. GABA basically acts as your nervous system's brake pedal, slowing down brain activity to produce a calming effect.
All right.
The critical difference here is that etizolum is between 6 and 8 times stronger than standard diazepam. It causes severe central nervous system depression. It forces your respiratory system to slow down dangerously and causes your heart rate to plummet.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and if it's mixed with alcohol, it simply stops the heart.
And because they are just dumping this raw, highly potent powder into an industrial mixer without any pharmaceutical-grade quality assurance, the dosage consistency must be wildly erratic.
Oh, completely erratic.
It's like making a batch of chocolate chip cookie dough, but instead of the chips being evenly distributed by a professional baker, one cookie gets absolutely nothing, and the next cookie gets a fatal handful of chocolate.
That is a very grim but accurate way to picture it. That crude mixing process is exactly what makes these street pills so incredibly lethal. In Scotland, the statistical fallout is horrifying.
Really? What happened there?
Well, Glasgow City Council had to issue public health warnings when overdose deaths spiked by 43% in a single year. In the city of Dundee, this fake street Valium was implicated in over 60% of all drug-related deaths.
60%. That's insane.
In certain major cities, these counterfeit anxiety pills were actually killing more people than heroin.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge the logic of this business model for a second. If you are creating a product that is that wildly inconsistent and you are literally killing off your own consumer base, how does this enterprise even survive? Isn't that just a terrible business model?
You'd think so, yes. But the economics of severe addiction operate completely outside standard business logic. Volume and availability completely trump quality control.
Because the demand is just that desperate.
Exactly. Their customers are deeply physically dependent on the chemical relief these pills provide. When a user buys street Valium, they know they are taking a profound risk, but the biological drive of the addiction overrides their self-preservation.
Wow.
For Spivey and his team, there were no safety checks. It was just raw powder pressed into pills and pushed into the supply chain as fast as humanly possible.
We need to quantify that speed, actually, because a converted stable can only hold so much machinery.
Right. And the scale forced them to expand. They eventually purchased a second industrial unit in Swinton just to increase their capacity.
In Swinton, okay.
Yeah, the machinery they were running was capable of producing tens of thousands of pills every single hour. It cost them mere pence to manufacture a tablet, but by the time that pill filtered through regional bulk buyers down to street-level dealers, it was sold to the end user for about £1.
The profit margins are staggering. Like 1,000 pills might cost a local dealer £100 and they flip it for $1,000.
Exactly. When police finally audited the sheer volume of counterfeit drugs this gang produced, they estimated the high-end street value at £288 million.
Nearly £250 million. So he turns a $2.4 million lottery win into an empire worth 100 times his original capital. I have to imagine that level of wealth generated in total secrecy creates a profound psychological delusion of invincibility.
It absolutely does. During the trial, prosecutors presented these text messages that Spivey had sent to his co-conspirators. In one group chat, this elderly pensioner from Wigan literally typed, "Elon and Jeff best watch their backs."
You're kidding.
No, I mean, in his own reality, he viewed himself as a titan of industry on par with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. He possessed multiple industrial sites, complex international supply chains, a national distribution network, and just massive cash flow.
But success in the criminal underworld creates a unique structural problem, right?
Yeah.
You can't just be a passive manufacturer when you are sitting on £250 million worth of illicit product. You become a massive target for rival syndicates.
Yeah, you attract dangerous predators who want to take what you've built, and this forces the organization to evolve.
To evolve how?
Well, when investigators finally cracked into Callum Dorian's encrypted communications, they didn't just find mundane logistics about tablet production. They uncovered photographs and detailed negotiations regarding the sale and distribution of military-grade firearms.
Wait, really? It's one thing to be like a real-life Walter White cooking up illicit substances in the suburbs, but it's an entirely different level of criminality to pivot into international arms dealing.
It's a massive leap.
It's like finding out your local neighborhood baker is secretly supplying heavy artillery to a militia. Why make that pivot?
It falls under illicit supply chain diversification. They were actively facilitating the supply of automatic weapons to organized crime groups across the UK.
Good Lord, what kind of weapons?
The intelligence files listed AK-47 assault rifles, Uzis, Tech-9s, Scorpion machine pistols, and Grand Power pistols, complete with silencers. They were basically leveraging the secure logistics network they had already built for the drugs to move highly lucrative, highly dangerous weapons.
And they weren't just brokering these deals, were they? They were physically holding the inventory?
Right. Yeah, when police eventually raided Spivey's property, they found 3 viable World War II-era firearms hidden on site. But the most disturbing discovery was the modified ammunition. The rounds had ball bearings physically attached to the tips.
Okay, let's explain the physics of that for a second.
Yeah.
Standard ammunition is designed to penetrate, but modifying the tip changes how the kinetic energy transfers upon impact.
Exactly. The ball bearings cause the projectile to fragment violently upon striking a target. It is a modification explicitly designed to maximize catastrophic tissue damage. They were dealing in weapons designed for absolute carnage.
This brings us to the most crucial question of the investigation, though. How do you catch an enterprise this disciplined? Because they have corporate shielding, frosted windows, off-site storage, and they certainly aren't coordinating weapons drops via, like, standard text messages.
No, definitely not.
They were leaving almost zero digital footprint on the open web.
Right. They relied on a communication service called EncroChat, which operated essentially as a digital burn bag. It wasn't an app you could just download from an app store.
Oh, how did it work then?
You purchased a custom modified device for thousands of pounds. The GPS, camera, and microphone were literally physically removed from the hardware.
Wow.
The operating system was replaced with a closed-loop, military-grade encrypted network. If a user entered a specific panic PIN, the device would instantly and permanently wipe all its data. The criminal underworld honestly believed it was a mathematically impenetrable fortress.
But a digital fortress is only as strong as its central infrastructure. So if European law enforcement brought them down, they must have targeted the foundation itself, right?
Yeah, French investigators executed one of the most brilliant cyber operations in history. They didn't even waste time trying to crack the individual encryption algorithms on the phones.
Yeah.
Instead, they located the central EncroChat servers in France and managed to infiltrate the hardware. They pushed a fake operating system update out to the entire network.
Oh, that is genius.
Yeah, when a criminal updated their device, they unknowingly installed police malware that bypassed the encryption entirely. The malware silently copied every message, photograph, and delivery schedule before it was encrypted, sending a shadow copy directly to law enforcement servers.
I can't even imagine. The moment the criminals realized the network was compromised, the panic must have been just absolute chaos.
Oh, it was. On June 13th, 2020, the administrators of EncroChat detected the breach. They broadcast a frantic, system-wide alert instructing every user to physically destroy their handsets immediately.
Wow.
Across Europe, phones were smashed with hammers and thrown into canals. Syndicates were burning evidence and frantically relocating their product.
But the digital trap had already snapped shut.
Exactly. The police had been silently gathering and cataloging intelligence for months at that point. In the UK, this massive data dump launched Operation Venetic.
Operation Venetic, right.
Yeah, intelligence analysts sifted through the decrypted messages and connected that Fallen Soda handle directly to Callum Dorian, tracking his communications about weapons back to a specific elderly lottery winner in Astley.
Which sets the stage for the physical takedown. So in April 2022, police are running surveillance on a storage container site in Astley. They watch a hired van leave the facility and execute a traffic stop. And inside, they find Callum Dorian and Lee Drury.
Yep. And in the back of that van, investigators found 2.6 million counterfeit diazepam tablets. The street value sitting in that single vehicle was up to £5.2 million.
Unbelievable.
They were actually en route to a hotel in Manchester for a massive distribution handover.
But the van bus was just the opening move to secure the men, right?
Yeah.
They needed to hit the infrastructure before the rest of the network could react.
Right. So on May 17th, 2022, Greater Manchester Police executed highly coordinated simultaneous raids across multiple properties. When they breached that red brick cottage on Lower Green Lane and bypassed those frosted windows, they finally saw the industrial tablet presses.
The actual lab.
The lab. They found mountains of raw chemical powder, finished tablets ready for distribution, and just massive bundles of bundled cash.
And hidden away in those garages, alongside the drug manufacturing equipment, they found the Lotus and the Porsche that Spivey had kept completely out of sight from his neighbors.
Yeah.
They seized the firearms, the modified ball-bearing ammunition, and raided the Swinton Industrial Unit. It was basically a complete dismantling of the empire. So what happened in court?
Well, the judicial response was severe. Callum Dorian, the tech organizer, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced in 2024 to 12 years in prison. Lee Drury, the corporate frontman, also pleaded guilty and received nearly 10 years.
But John Eric Spivey and his son refused to admit their roles, didn't they? They took it to trial, claiming they were entirely ignorant of the massive industrial conspiracy happening on their own property.
Yeah, which didn't work. The jury at Bolton Crown Court systematically rejected that defense. Both men were convicted. The son, and John Colin Spivey, was sentenced to 9 years. And then in January 2026, John Eric Spivey stood before the judge. He was 80 years old.
80 years old.
The court highlighted that he had basically weaponized his lottery win to build a cartel well past a normal retirement age. He was found guilty on multiple charges, including the overarching drug conspiracy and the possession of lethal firearms.
And he received a sentence of 16 years and 6 months. So he will be 96 years old before he is even eligible to apply for release.
Yeah, given the realities of his age, it is a virtual certainty that he will spend the remainder of his life in a prison cell.
It is just a profoundly bizarre tragedy. You know, you look at a 2.4 million pound lottery win, and you just imagine the pure, unadulterated freedom it represents. It could have funded an idyllic, peaceful final chapter for a man entering his golden
He
years.
really could have.
But instead, it served as the seed capital for an industrial machine that flooded communities with lethal synthetic chemicals and military-grade weaponry.
It really shatters the comfortable illusions we hold about our own communities, doesn't it? We rely on these superficial markers to judge safety. We see a quiet retiree tending to his garden, driving a battered white van, giving a polite wave over the fence, and, well, our brains just categorize that as harmless.
You're right. But if an 80-year-old grandfather in a sleepy former mining village can quietly operate a $250 million drug and weapons cartel right under everyone's noses, I mean, how well do you really know the people living next door to you?